panelists with us tonight, and we're also recording. The panel is brought to you tonight by FourthWave, and I'm Cheryl Benega, the co-founder of FourthWave and the moderator for tonight. FourthWave is an accelerator for high potential female technology entrepreneurs making a difference in our world. They receive business mentorship, leadership and culture coaching, and help with accessing capital to grow their businesses. We're just concluding our 2021 cohort with 11 amazing women leading the way. And you can learn more about them via a link in the chat that will connect you with their profiles. They're amazing entrepreneurs, and I'm excited to have worked with them this past year. Before we get started with this exciting panel for tonight, I want to thank our sponsors, the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, TAEP Small Business Innovation Center, operated by the Cal Asian Chamber of Commerce, Five Star Bank, the Elk Grove Office of Economic Development, Stoll Reeves LLP, and SMUD, the Sacramento Municipal Utility District. Thank you all to our generous sponsors for supporting FourthWave in entrepreneurship. I also want to thank our partners at the Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, especially Cameron Law and Jesse Becker-Alexander, who've been integral to our program and success this year. They have been fantastic partners, along with Dale Carlson, and President Nelson at Sacramento State, in getting FourthWave to where we are today. Okay, now let's meet our fantastic panelists for today. All right, I'm going to have everybody do a quick introduction, and then we're going to get into hearing from all these amazing women we have tonight. So let's start with Kristen Haffert.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kristen Haffert from Mind the Gap, and our company is about 6 years old. We're based in New Jersey and San Diego, California, and have been doing work on gender equality for more than 25 years. And so we really support businesses, whether it's companies as large as Amazon, work with organizations like the UN, multilaterals, nonprofits, to really look at gender equality and how you improve that in the workplace, really through also a diverse lens. And so our work has brought us to more than 120 countries to really help people mine the gap for talent and really figure out how do they do the recruitment and the retention piece right, so that we not only have strong women's leadership and diverse workforces, but also that they stay that way and that it's sustainable. So thanks for inviting us, Cheryl, tonight.
Great. Well, thanks for attending, and we're looking forward to hearing your perspective that is global. Let's hear from Helly.
Hey everyone, my name is Helly Rodriguez Trilliman. I'm originally from the Fort Worth area in Texas, and I'm the founder of Lacquer Bar and Lacquer Bar U, which is an online education platform for nail technicians to learn the skills that they didn't learn in today's very broken and antiquated beauty school systems. So yeah, that's my startup that I founded more recently. Before that, I was an early employee at Five Stars. I was the 11th and first female employee at Five Stars, which recently had an exit, which is awesome. And so, yeah, have a lot of experience in the tech startup world for the past 10 years. And then more recently started my own media content firm called Hella Cool Ventures. And I'm also running for office. So lots of things on my plate and what I'm doing. So yeah, entrepreneur though at heart.
Yeah, so share with us what office you're running for.
Oh yes, I'm running for U.S. House of Representatives for Texas District 12. So it's currently held by Kay Granger, a Republican who's been there for a long time. And so I'm running as a Democrat. And yeah, going to try to flip a seat because Texas needs it.
Okay, so there's a way of leading the way in our post-pandemic world right there. Awesome. Colleen Ammerman, please introduce yourself.
Okay, well, that is a tough act to follow, but I'm really excited to be here on this pretty spectacular panel all around. So I'm Colleen. I'm the director of the Gender Initiative at Harvard Business School, and our mission is to catalyze and translate research to eradicate gender, race, and other forms of inequality in business and society, which really means that at our core, we try to be a bridge between research and practice, helping leaders at all levels, from people starting a company to managing their first team to CEOs, be change agents for equity and inclusion in our organizations. A colleague of mine who's a faculty affiliate at the Gender Initiative and I just put out a book this spring called Glass Half Broken, Shattering the Barriers That Still Hold Women Back at Work. I think Jesse is nicely sharing that in the chat, and I just want to put a plug. If you do read it, please leave a review on Amazon. Apparently that's very important. Our publisher keeps telling us that we need to push this, so you'll have our undying gratitude. But excited for the conversation today.
Well, great. Yeah, you're going to bring an awesome perspective for us as well. And I loved the book, so I highly recommend it. And it covers not just entrepreneurship, it covers women in all aspects of business, and with great research and case studies. Lily, please intro yourself.
It's so wonderful to be here with you all tonight and with this very remarkable panel of women. My name is Lily Cabrera. I'm the founder and CEO of Well Market, and we are a current FourthWave cohort member. Well Market is a platform for mental wellness at work for everyone. We keep talent thriving by supporting mental wellness with an integrated well-being approach and through a gender and racial equity lens.
Thank you. We've been so excited to have you and watch your progress, and we can't wait to see what you're going to do in the future, leading us out of this pandemic world we've been living in. Barb DeHart, our former entrepreneur in residence and heart close to FourthWave. Welcome, and please introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Barb. I'm also super excited to be here with such a great group of women, and have been just so happy to have been part of the FourthWave effort for a while, which is really aligned well with my work in, I come out of the media and entertainment technology sector, and so have spent my career in a very patriarchal, male-dominated industry. I spent a little more than 4 years founding an education technology startup using virtual reality to teach STEM education at the university level, and that initiative is off and running, and I've just recently returned back to the media and entertainment technology sector, where I am the vice president of strategy and operations for a company in that space. So I've spent my career early on really focused on leadership development, and have spent the last 10 years or so committed to women's leadership, developing my own level of conscious leadership, and helping instill that in teams. I've done a tremendous amount of change agent work and acquisitions and divestitures, and so change is kind of my middle name, and really the focus of women. I love that Helly is running for office. I also, just as a side note, run a women's grassroots organization called Indivisible Women. There's about 3,000 women where we are really supporting women in becoming informed and active in the political process, no matter what your political affiliation is, but really to become, focus on education and activism. So I'm excited to see Helly taking the charge there. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, what a group of change agents and powerful women we have here from a variety of areas. So I am going to dive in with some questions for the audience. If you have some burning questions, you can put them in chat. And as we wrap up towards the end, Jesse will share some of those questions for the panelists towards the end. But, just to get started, we've just experienced an unprecedented time, clearly in 20 and 21 with the global pandemic. In addition, with the Black Lives Matter and Me Too movements, we've seen people taking their voices and advocating change across all spectrums. These powerful forces are now in place, and women in the workplace have been especially impacted on all fronts, often due to our role as caregivers in the family, but in a number of other ways. I'd like to start off tonight by asking our panelists how their work has been impacted by the events in the last 2 years and what they are particularly focused on going forward. So who would like to take that first? Okay, go, Kristen.
Thanks, Cheryl. I mean, maybe I could just kick us off by saying, you know, one of the real bright spots for us coming out of this, or not coming out of the pandemic, hopefully coming out of the pandemic, but in the last couple of years has been a real shift with the companies we're working with in asking us to come in and train women and support women. And they've now really moved to a place where they're thinking about how do they change their organization, how do they change their institution rather than change the women. And I know a lot of my colleagues here have experienced similar sentiments in different ways, but that for us, you know, having people not want to kind of do these one-off opportunities, but really think about, okay, how do we step into helping women be authentic leaders? What does that look like? What does it look like if women of color can show up as themselves in the workplace and really thrive? And what's this new template going to look like? And so it's been really exciting for us to kind of see that shift and for people to begin, and I think in large part thanks to some of the work that my colleagues are doing, to begin to connect, you know, women's leadership and the broader DEI concepts with this return to work, or what that might look like, right? And we all connect, I think, those dots kind of naturally, depending on the nature of our work. But that's starting to really happen, and so that's what's been exciting for us.
Oh, that is exciting. The organizations are gonna change so women can be authentic and bring ourselves. I love that. Lily, do you want to jump in here? I know your company largely is moving in this direction.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cheryl. And Kristen, thank you for your remarks. And I was just about to pop in and say, hey, I'd love to dovetail on that. In speaking of women of color at work, I think that companies are really waking up to the fact that we have this dual crisis in our hands, right? So we have, on one hand, the COVID-19 pandemic, and on the other hand, we have a long overdue awakening to systemic racism and injustices. And the burden that women of color have had to bear at work often comes with a larger level of microaggressions, microinvalidations, and othering behavior, like feeling like you're representing your race or ethnicity at work. So when you say that women can show up as their real authentic selves at work, I think that is you know, a wonderful positive shift that will come out of this pandemic, come out of women saying, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to show up as who we are, and the healing that goes along with that. And where Wellmarket is concerned is really looking at wellness at work, specifically mental wellness at work, with a racial and gender equity lens. So that takes into account the intersectionality of employees. That takes into account their personalized choice in well-being offerings, or a coach, or the right type of therapist, or the right type of program that really speaks to their goals and their cultural context. So just wanted to raise that and say that we're hearing from a lot of clients, especially women of color clients, the need for more diverse and inclusive providers, and the need for data and feedback to show employers what will work, instead of just in aggregate what works across employees. What does that look like when you break it down by sector?
Great. There you go, Kristen. As you're working with people, you know that Wellmarket is here to help them with that cultural change that's going on.
Yeah,
awesome.
You know, just
ahead,
to add to that, I think I always tell people, I feel like the labor market has just had it's a rug that's just been shaken up. And so everything is now kind of settling back in. And I think what many people have, through painful experiences in many cases, have experienced is, or have realized, is that we don't have to accept the status quo going forward. I think that when we look at the amount of investment that finally is starting to grow for underrepresented founders. That is, we're starting to see work of putting, making sure that we have more women on boards, and really to have our leadership inside our organizations reflect the communities from which we all live, right? So I think that there is an increased awareness, and we're starting to see it in many, 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 many different ways. Now, maybe it's not fast enough, and maybe it's not, happening as broadly as we would like, but I see that, and it gives me comfort that it's that, once we know better, we do better. And I think a lot of people have become aware of what's possible in ways that without the pandemic, we never would have realized. So I think that the acceleration of that progress through the painful pandemic has been at least maybe a little bit of a silver lining.
Acceleration. So Colleen, in your work and research across many different organizations, are you seeing that acceleration and or not? What are you seeing?
It's a great question. I mean, I think there's variation, I don't think there's the one story, right? There's variation across industries and sectors and all of that. I mean, I do agree with what Kristen actually kind of kicked us off with, which is definitely a shift in, kind of what I would call like understanding or level of sophistication in identifying the problem, right? Where the appetite for actually changing cultures and changing systems and structures has really increased, right? We have, I think, started to truly move away from the paradigm of what can we do to kind of help women, right? Which sometimes means kind of, approaching it as if there's something wrong with women, or just figuring out how can we kind of equip individual women to kind of be those trailblazers, and really to a paradigm of what can we do to make our organizations places where people who are in the minority on really any facet of their identity are not systematically disadvantaged by how we do things, right? And I do think that is a change that's happening. That's kind of a sea change that's occurring. I mean, I think, again, it's not uniform kind of across the landscape, but I do think it's happening. And, one thing that's interesting that my book co-author and I started hearing kind of early in the pandemic was very senior, very accomplished executive women, talking to us and saying, wow, my opinion about my employer has really either changed for the worse. Like, I thought I had a great employer, but the way they've been handling the pandemic and the challenges that their employees face, particularly caregivers, has really disappointed me. Or kind of the extreme opposite, that, saying, wow, I'm so impressed by my employer, my company, my leadership, that I am, theirs for life. And there was not a lot of middle ground. So we kind of are interested to track this over time and hypothesize that there is going to be kind of, like leaders and laggards and not a lot of middle ground. And I think that's really something organizations need to pay attention to, small and large, right? In terms of, how they think about talent, right? Are they really going to be a place where people want to work, where women want to work, or are they going to be a place where, they have a reputation as not an employer that is going to allow you to manage the difficulties of something like a global pandemic, or, as Lily was saying, just kind of be able to have kind of a healthy baseline of well-being at work. So I do think that change is happening.
There we go.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Helly. Please jump in.
Super interesting what you were saying about just how, like, it was either you loved your employer because they were doing so well, or it changed your opinion of them. Like, I thought they were amazing, and now, oh my God, like that kind of thing. Not only just seeing that so much, but then also coming to the realization for me of like, where are the companies that have more women? I guarantee you that they're the ones that are probably handling this better, that have more women in leadership, period. And so and I feel like this time has really inspired, I think, a lot of women. And that's what's been the most encouraging for me, to see other female founders and whatnot from all walks of life starting businesses, because again, going into these workplaces that aren't for you, that aren't going to advocate for you or be there for you, like, or support you when you have young kids at home. Like, that's like moms right now who have like childcare is the biggest nightmare, and how expensive it is. Like, I'm a successful entrepreneur, had some exits. I can afford childcare now, like, but, I have nail technicians who I've been working with who literally, the nail industry completely imploded, right? And I had single moms from lower income backgrounds, moving, in with their parents, having to take bartending jobs, immunocompromised because their license doesn't work where they moved to, because of these stupid licensing laws. Like there's all these different things in these kind of female oriented, worlds that like a lot of people haven't seen, but also again, seeing these women who are so resilient, these single moms, regardless of, whatever's going on, and like just kind of fighting through and, starting businesses and still having that entrepreneurial spirit. So that's been the most encouraging thing for me to see is, the passion, and also seeing within here in FourthWave, all the different founders within here, just what they're building, that is so for this time to who have, accepted the challenge of, all this, inequality and, the tension, racial tension and, sex. I mean, there's all the, systemic sexism. I mean, all these things, right? Like, and women are coming to the table with ideas on how to solve issues, how to solve education issues, to solve, all these different things. So that's been really, really cool to see.
And the beautiful part about that, and this is a shout out to FourthWave and the entire kind of idea and premise behind it, is that we are not advocating for women, to what Colleen was saying earlier. We are not advocating for women to exist in a patriarchal, male-dominated world. We're advocating for women to show up as their whole self and to create companies that are built with the ideals and the ideas and the vision that we talk about here, where we can show up as our whole self. We can bring our whole family into the picture, right? Our entire life is a part of who we are. And that we can grow from that point of view. So we are not trying to get a seat at the table anymore. We're trying to literally build our own table, and we have the power and the opportunity to do that at a very grassroots level, which is what is so exciting to me. Teaching women to lead authentically as women instead of teaching women to lead so that they can fit into somebody else's idea of what the world should look like. And to me, that's like rah, let's go do that, because there's lots of success to be had. And 10 years from now or 20 years from now, our business environment's going to look quite different. So, congratulations to everybody here being part of it, because it's a super exciting time.
Well, thanks for bringing that up, because it's definitely, it's everything's going to change. We heard, I think Colleen said, hey, we're either people are doing great with their organizations or they're falling down, and the pace is going to go fast. So you're going to know who is creating the new way to do business and who is not relatively quickly, and it's going to show up in results. And part of our thesis is it's easier to create new cultures, new inclusive cultures, than it is to go back and redo old ones. And so why not start with people like Lily and the other cohort members here who are building these new organizations. Janine Yancey of M-Train, who was in our 2017 cohort, who now has a very large organization all about diversity and inclusion. And so creating these new organizations, I would love to hear from Kristen and Colleen on your perspective on how the new organizations are going to take leadership versus some of the older organizations that are, going to be hustling to try to adapt so that they can retain the talent like Helly and Lily here in our panel.
Well, I can jump in first and say I think it's a really, really, really exciting question, and I think that California is going to be one of the places where we see this first, because one of the initiatives we've been working on is to make SB 826 the law that required women on boards, and now you have AB 979 requiring diversity on boards that came shortly thereafter. But we have that law in place now, and we've been working with the California Partners Project, which is the initiative of the first partner, Jen Siebel Newsom, to really make sure that law was successful. And what we saw was before the law was in place, there were 15% women on, roughly 15% women on boards. And now it's close to 30, now that the law's been in place for 3 years. So by the end of this year, all companies are supposed to comply with the law, right? However, the bad news is that women of color are only 6.6% of the seats of those boards, and then Latinas are only 1%, which in California is atrocious. So we've been really, a part of this effort to figure out, okay, how do we connect the supply and demand? Because a lot of the conversation that's going on is, of course, as everyone knows, we can't find the women and they're not qualified. And those are the same things echoed around women of color. And so, we've been really working to have conversations that are about, okay, to Helly's point, what kind of composition do we really need in order to see, what composition do we need on a board to actually anticipate the future and not have groupthink and look at things differently. So when you go from, 15% of women on boards to 30, you're looking at, a lot of companies that have, they've added a couple women here and there, but right now there are still 440 seats roughly open, and that's at about a little over 350 companies. So that's for anyone who's listening who thinks that board service might be in their future, and I really hope that FourthWave, my colleagues at FourthWave will strongly consider this, because that's a real opening, and we already know, to say the obvious, that when you look at studies, you've got a higher return on equity when you have more women on the board. You have higher return on investment. You have higher return on sales. So this, we're done proving all that. And there are plenty of studies that say it, but that's really, something we're super excited about is how do you also change the culture of these boards to make them places where women of color and all kinds of people want to stay and lead these organizations?
Because that would be something that was a question for me, because it's like, are these places that we even want to go, right? Because it's like that's the burn. So how would you say, like, for young women like me and Lily, considering joining boards where we're like, man, everyone there, I don't even know, like, if I would even fit in this at all, right? So what are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
That's a great question, and it's a part of what we're actually in the middle of building. But I think we've seen women of color walk away from boards for exactly that reason. And the question that what we want to know about a board is this a place where you're not just ticking a box, but where you're really wanting to learn from me, right? And so part of what we're trying to do is help what we've learned from even the people that are there that might look kind of all the same. They often don't know a lot about each other's backgrounds in terms of, diversity of thought, diversity of, what they bring to the table. And so they don't even know what they're missing. So I think part of it, we can't put it on women of color to help, everyone show what's missing, but helping to create a conversation around this at the board level of, these different assets and the value of all these different characteristics that we're all bringing, I think is the door opener to helping people see, what opportunities there are and what they're missing out on.
Yeah, what I really love about you're bringing to light the public company board composition and the legislation is that we had an action and we had results that are quite significant. And at FourthWave, where we're working with entrepreneurs, we're dealing with we'd like to envision a world where 50% of the venture capital goes to women. And right now we're in the single digits. Okay. So, there's another area that needs to get moved significantly. And I don't think legislation at this point is going to be the answer. And I would love to hear thoughts on how we, because this is our mission, getting it to, at least half of the capital, levers that we might have in this area that can help people like Helly and Lily have the capital to build you know, the next Fortune 500 company that is going to have a diverse board and culture from the beginning.
Cheryl, if I may, I do have a comment about that coming from a woman of color founder. I think that part of the equation is first and foremost supporting women founders so that we don't burn out. Women in the workforce right now, and especially women entrepreneurs, have a higher rate of burnout, and burnout contributes to increased anxiety, depression, health issues, immune system issues, metabolic health issues. So when you're talking about a cross-section of women, especially that have racial and ethnic disparities of health, adding a layer of burnout on top of it is a threat to our existence, right? A threat to our ability to impact the change we want to impact in the world. So I think it's key that programs like FourthWave support the integrated well-being and the conscious leadership of the next generation of women leaders. And I just want to applaud the work that you're doing in setting us up for success for the future, that making sure that we're still there on the road to seeking investment. So that's first and foremost in my mind.
Okay, so
important. I was going to say, I can add a couple of thoughts on that, kind of based on research happening at the school, if that's helpful. Because it just, what you were saying, Lily, reminded me when we do, we have an ongoing longitudinal study of Harvard Business School alumni, and we find that even among Harvard Business School alumni, right, this is a very advantaged population. We have a number of items about burnout, stress, mental health, et cetera. And always the biggest gap is between women of color and white men, right? Women of color are always at the bottom. I mean, so this is consistent even among this population, right? Which has a lot of, privilege and advantage and, has these kind of supports that so many other people don't. So I think that is really important. And I think in terms of kind of the question about trying to equalize, the dollars going to founders who are, have traditionally been underrepresented, including white women and people of color broadly, I think we've got to talk about attacking it kind of from all sides, right? So there's a piece about supporting and educating and equipping founders, right, to navigate the ecosystem that we operate in. And I do want to throw out a plug for a book that's not mine. A different colleague of mine at HBS, a scholar named Laura Wang, Huang, has a really terrific book called Edge. So easy to remember. And she studies early stage entrepreneurs, and her book it's actually really great for anybody, but I think really especially great for founders. It offers this paradigm for how to take kind of the negative preconceptions and biases that people have about someone like you, and not just overcome that, but actually kind of flip it and try to figure out how to use it as a building block to, get your message across and create a relationship and, basically use it to your advantage, right? So it's a great book. I highly recommend it. So I think that's important, but at the same time, we've got to think about educating funders, right? And kind of helping them understand the value that entrepreneurs who don't look like everyone else who's come across their screen. And Laura actually also does some research on this. Some of you may have seen this article from a couple years ago in Harvard Business Review, where she and colleagues found that women entrepreneurs were asked very different types of questions, right? So yeah, everybody's nodding. So this got a lot of play, which was great because it was, just makes it so clear that, really funders also need to be educated, right? And it's, to their benefit, right? It's not, of course, it's absolutely the right thing to do, but it's not simply scolding them, but it's saying, hey, if you have these sort of blinders on, if you have this warped, kind of way that you are, taking the inputs, then you're not actually making good decisions. So if you want to identify the best people, the best opportunities, right? You need to kind of figure out how to unpack those biases that are really skewing what you're seeing. So I think about, we're doing some work now with the Rock Center for Entrepreneurship, my colleagues there, to figure out what are some ways that we can kind of advance that conversation both among founders and funders. So, and I know FourthWave is this is exactly what you're trying to do, is kind of move that along on all these dimensions.
Well, and I think too, when you look at traditional funding sources in the venture world, the unconscious bias obviously is a huge problem, but waking up to that is going to come when those organizations have more women working there, when the boards, when we have board representation, women and people of color, that and any underrepresented community, so that again, we've got, I think the consciousness is being raised right now. And we have to actually see action. And I think in the long term, it's going to be the companies that are going to be successful are going to be those ones who've actually taken the opportunity to adjust and bring more women in and people of color and, from every walk of life. So that's, to me, we need to see the proof is in the pudding, right? They got to start walking the walk. And that's going to be when they start hiring people, not just in lower level positions, but really, they open the ranks up. That's, to me, when we'll see it really happening. And also when we have more successful exits of underrepresented founders, then those underrepresented founders are going to begin investing as well. So it's a whole, we've got to get the things in motion. And to your point, Colleen, it's got to come from lots of different directions.
And I think that it's so important that what you're saying about us turning into investors, because I'm not saying that it's not possible to change a lot of these old school firms, with, the older dudes at the top, just doing their same old thing they've been doing for forever. But we can do this on our own. And part of even why I'm running too, is to, like, if nothing else, inspire more women to run, to start companies, to start startups, to all of those things, right? Like, that's what we want to do, right? We want more women starting companies, then having exits. And then again, us turning around, and it's like, you pay it forward. I'm investing now in other startups, right? So it's just like, and focusing on female founded ones. So, oh my gosh, just all about just getting more women to start businesses. That's what we need to be doing.
And I love, Helly, that you're running for office, because I think back to how I got into this work, and I was sitting in a college classroom and found out that women weren't included in the clinical trials for heart disease, the leading killer of women. And I'm like, wait a second, I live in the United States. It's 1995, whatever. And I was like, this is what? And that's what led me on this path. And we actually came from, me and my co-founder, Jessica Grounds, we recreated Mind the Gap after a long history of getting more women elected. And I'm saying all this to say that I think this is a moment in time, while everything won't be solved through legislation, and nor should it be, this is a moment where we have an opportunity for the political and the workplace piece to be even more woven tightly, and for us to take advantage of opportunities and to use the platform that we have as business owners, because they're going to listen to fourth wave women, when it comes to these policy issues. And so we have a unique moment in time in that sense, and I hope we continue to take advantage of it.
I love that. We do have a unique moment in time, and thank you for summarizing. And we do need to come at it from all angles. And the education aspect of, we need to educate the investors, right? There needs to be an education. The Kauffman Foundation, many of you may not know this, but they did a quite comprehensive study. They started in the year 2000, and they surveyed 20,000, get that, 20,000 startups through 2020. And they had metrics of diversity. So it wasn't who the founder was, but it was diversity on the teams. And their result was that those that were categorized as diverse startups did 30% better in terms of their returns to investors, 30%. And so there is data, lots of data out there. I'm even like, we do not have to wait for the next unicorns that, are diverse. We already have that. And so I really like the education. The other stat that I was looking up that is also encouraging is in California, to Kristen's point about California leading in the venture area. As of, I think it was Q4 or Q1 last year, Q1 this year, 17% of the venture investors were female in California. That blows me away from when I started in, the late 90s. So it's still, we want 50%. We still have some ways to go, but it is happening, and that is because it's not the big firms either, right? It's just what Helly said. It's women starting their own firms. It's, angel investors. And so, that's coming at it from, multiple sides as well. So there's some optimism, and let's just say we have time to do it and get it to 50% because the time is right. I would like to hear from the panel on who are some of the women you see leading change. I know we have people here, but who we should all be looking at. Anybody?
Well, I'll throw in a quick little shout out to a student that I know. Actually, I mean, there's so many, it's like hard. I'm sure everyone's like thinking, oh my gosh, where do I even start? There's so many incredible women out there. But one of the cool things about my job is getting to interact with students at Harvard Business School, and the students that kind of come across my path tend to be those that really care about issues of equity and inclusion and are often kind of coming up with like interesting, cool solutions for how to tackle that in all different dimensions. And one student who's currently in her second year, Rachel, is really interested in something that we've kind of touched on a little bit, right? The gender gap and kind of the disproportionate caregiving role that women face, not just with regard to childcare, but just in terms of gender inequality in the home, right? I'm sure I don't need to belabor to the point to this audience that women take on the lion's share of kind of maintenance of a home when they're in a couple, a heterosexual couple. And so she has designed an app to help couples actually track what they're doing, right? To kind of do all that sort of, basically chores, right? The stuff that has to get done that women tend to disproportionately take on, which then, is a burden, in terms of time, cognitively, emotionally. And so she, I just think, has a very cool idea about how to kind of equip couples that really do care about this. I think what she's found is a lot of her male peers say like, well, yeah, I get it. I know it's a problem. I hear about it from my female friends, like, but how do I don't think about it. Like, what is it? Help me figure out like how to actually be an ally here. And so she's come up with just a really simple tool that couples can use to actually track what they're doing so that they can sit down and say, oh, when it looks really uneven, they can kind of figure out how to manage that. So, I think, we need, of course, a lot of structural solutions to issues of the disproportionate caregiving burden that women face. That's, an issue dear to my heart. But I think it's very cool to see young women kind of coming up with innovative ideas about how we can just keep tackling this day by day. So I want to throw a shout out to Rachel.
Great. I would like that app.
Yeah, it's very cool. I can give a shout out to Shelly Bell, who runs Black Girl Ventures. She's helping Black and brown women find capital, and she's been doing it for a few years now really well. She started out, Jessica and I actually met her, and she was creating t-shirts. She had a little t-shirt company with her mom, and then the next thing I know, she's got this awesome, she's had a few businesses over the years, and she used those to build Black Girl Ventures. And she's really, she's been doing pitch competitions all over the country. Think she might have done some globally now. But she, just the way she's going after funding and being really, really focused and supportive of Black and brown women has been awesome. And so she's, I follow her on everything and kind of get my own advice from her. So Shelly Bell, Black Girl Venture.
Shelly Bell. All right. Go, go, go. I love it. Any other?
I'm gonna shout out and Lily knows her as well. Mandela from Founder Gym. So Mandela Schumacher Hodge Dixon, along the name. And she's the founder, CEO of Founder Gym, which is, this program that basically trains people from underrepresented backgrounds, how to raise VC money. And now it's evolved into lots of other different programming for different types of startups and different, specifically if you're a Black founder, specifically if you're LGBT, there's lots of different things now that they do. But just, she helped me when I was, in my early days, I was one of their early cohort members. And just helping me and helping people, understand that their weaknesses can be their strengths and kind of turning that into like your superpower type thing. So yeah, Mandela at Founder Gym, much love. Lily also was in Founder Gym as well, in a later cohort, but yeah, so what they're doing at Founder Gym,
yeah,
love them.
Yep, Mandela's definitely doing awesome work. Great.
And I definitely second that shout out. And I have an additional shout out to Arlen Hamilton at Backstage Capital. And I am just in love with her story and how she supports underestimated founders, right, for outsized results. And her capital firm is specifically to support founders who identify as women, people of color, and LGBTQ+. And she identifies as all three. So when you talk about intersectionality and you talk about outsized impact, I feel like her story is 100% right on and so inspiring.
Awesome.
I would like to shout out to somebody who you've seen commenting quite a bit, and that's Mariah Lichtenstern, who's obviously she's part of the FourthWave community, but also in the Sacramento region, and her support for underrepresented founders and the work she's doing in fundraising is really phenomenal and something that we have right in our own backyard. Such an amazing and inspiring story and woman, and really excited that she's, there goes Antoinette. Yes, Mariah. She's really a rock star and is somebody that actually maybe Jesse's posting. So in the chat, Jesse will maybe post Mariah's LinkedIn or website.
Yes, Mariah, she is a star, and we're so lucky to have her in FourthWave and on our board. And go, 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 go. She's been amazing. Okay, so I'm gonna have one more question, and then we'll see if we've got some audience questions that Jesse's come up with. But what advice do you have for women currently starting their careers or starting their own entrepreneurial journey?
I'll start with my favorite question that I ask everybody when I'm sitting around the dinner table with them for the first time. Ask yourself this question and then pay attention to the first answer that comes into your brain. And that is, if you could do anything in the world and be guaranteed of success, what would it be? And that is what, when I think about my founder experience, I think about the dreams and the desires that came to me around that idea, and because that is what inspired me, and that is what it takes. It takes a deep level of commitment for whatever reason, but a deep level of commitment. So I would ask myself that question and listen for the answer. And if you don't hear the answer right away, then continue to ask yourself that question, because that's what we're most inspired to create.
Love it.
I love that. I would add, if you care about, gender equality and equality issues, you can do it in many different capacities. So, and without this in your title. So I think, thinking about how you angle your business and, who you're really serving is a really thoughtful way of going about that, and being deliberate and systematic about that is what I think I would encourage people to do, because we can advance women in so many ways using so many different levers, and that's a piece of advice that I have.
Good advice.
I have some very kind of tactical advice that I would offer, in addition to these, the things already said. So I've interviewed, I don't know, probably at this point, a couple of hundred women who have been highly successful in all kind of different fields and industries, entrepreneurs, corporate executives, lawyers, the list goes on. And one of the things that really consistently comes up in those conversations, and something that they said really contributed to their success, is really being able early on to articulate your goals, and not just to yourself, but be able to communicate them very clearly, right? And so this seems kind of basic, but I can't tell you how many conversations they've had where I've had where someone has said a version of, I think what really kind of differentiated me from peers, or what enabled my success, particularly as a woman, right, and where often I am underestimated or undervalued, is I didn't just say, I want to develop my career and I like to keep growing with this company, or I want to, grow a sustainable business. I said, I'd like to run this division in 5 years, or I'd like to get to X million in revenue, right? Really concrete, specific things that you're aiming for, and, and communicate them to the people who can help you do that, which often is, your boss, right? And like formal performance evaluation and goal setting conversations, but also, everyone else, right? That can help you on that journey. And often that can be kind of uncomfortable. But I have to say that was something that consistently has come up in conversations I've had with women who've been really successful, and that they pointed to and said this was really important. So that's just a kind of practical advice that I like to throw out there. I think works.
I think that's more than practical. That's a lot of what we do at FourthWave, is we envision all the money that we're going to raise and our successful companies and their valuation growth. And if you can't get specific about that, it's going to be a lot harder to achieve it. I totally agree. Any other advice?
I have a piece of advice. It's sort of a dovetailing piece of advice from other leaders around the table. So I want to recommend that everyone, with their passion, with their purpose, with being driven and dedicated, especially with a social impact focus of your effort and work, take time to be kind to yourself, take time to be gentle to yourself, and realize that we're always our worst critics. So figure out how you can see the little girl in you that you used to be, and just give her some kindness here and there to keep going on.
I love that. Treat yourself like you would a good friend. We often don't do that, and it's so important. I love it. Okay, hey, I see one Q&A, Jesse. I'm going to just go ahead and read that unless you've got anything else. Nope. Okay. I heard one recommendation, but maybe we can reiterate it. Are there any? This is from Jackie Ramos. Are there any female startup advisor mentoring programs you would recommend? Of course, FourthWave here in Sacramento, and we're open. Half of our cohort comes from Northern California, and the other half can come from anywhere in the country. And Lily is in Atlanta, so we have cohort members from all over. So that's one. I have to get that plug in there. But Helly, do you want to talk about Founders Gym a little bit more, and any others that come to mind?
So yeah, with Founder Gym, it's been a while since I've been there, so probably Lily knows more recently what's been going on over there. But yeah, generally you apply for their 6-week program. I think they have different weeks in different programs for different types of, whether you're early stage or, Series B, further along. And it's specifically for founders who come from any underrepresented background. So that's women, LGBTQ founders, founders with disabilities, women, people of color, anyone who is basically not a straight white male, essentially. And again, a lot of it is kind of prepping you. Again, if you've never raised VC, and even if you do have some familiarity with it, like I did, because again, I came from, a YC startup that, raised, I was there to help raise their seed, A, B, C, all of that. So I was familiar with it and had some connections to it, but not really understanding that, hey, all these rules and all these things that they say for you to do as a startup entrepreneur, most of these things to do, the rules of the game are only work if you're a like Harvard young white dude or Asian dude, like, starting a software as service company. Like that's what it works for, and so trying to unlearn those things. So again, a lot of the Founders Gym program kind of is teaching these types of things, like, hey, here's what to know, here's what what to put in your pitch decks, and how to, again, even if you don't have that background of, oh, you didn't go to Harvard, you didn't work at McKinsey, you didn't come from money or whatever kind of, background, that you're able to use that in some way. And so a lot of it's kind of honing that in. So that's why, again, I'm just always about Founders. But any other ones I can think of, I can't think of any off the top of my head. I'm sure someone's going to be like, oh my gosh, you didn't say this one. But I have ADHD, so sometimes I just can't access certain things until later.
Yeah. And just a shout out to the Sacramento ecosystem. There's so much great, there's so many great resources available to founders in the Northern California area that it's, Laura Good Startup Sac is a great resource for that. The Carlson Center and the work that Cameron and Jesse are doing there is a very broad ecosystem. And so, and in every community, I think that there are, there are increasingly, groups, organizations, many of them that are focused on supporting not only entrepreneurship as an economic driver, but also supporting, communities of color and women and LGBTQ. And so, just spend some time Googling and also using your resources, even on LinkedIn, right? There's tons of resources. I've connected with so many great founders and so many great others in the ecosystem via that. But I think the thing to start with is, what are you looking for, right? To be clear, do I need help with my series, with my seed series funding? Do I need just to understand how to get started? Do I need help knowing if I'm even if I have a fundable business model, or if I'm really just interested in I want to bootstrap my startup? There's lots of different ways to get there. And so don't feel like you have to be stuck into somebody else's idea of what the path is. Just start to think about what would be most helpful to me, and ask your friends, because a lot of people are connected to a lot of different resources.
Yep. We have a ton of resources in our area, and now everything's virtual. So just Google and you can find lots of help. Well, we are, oh my gosh, out of time. Imagine that. Thank you to all of these wonderful panelists for this great discussion. And thank you everybody for your questions and comments. And we will wrap for tonight. This will be recorded and on the FourthWave website. If you have any friends or you want to review anything that we went over. Thanks again, everybody. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
It was great.
So much fun.